Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellowah Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today I want to talk about something that occurred to me the other night when I was at the Ecstatic Dance that I go to every month. I had been dancing and having a wonderful time, really enjoying myself, and I just kind of drifted to the side for a moment and I was watching other people moving around. And the following sentence just arrived in my mind. Sex is not the only way to enjoy the juiciness in the hips. And I thought about that afterwards and realized that was going to be an episode, a solo episode, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to say. And I realized that something certainly in the UK, and I wonder if it's the same where you are, certainly in the UK, many of us have grown up believing that any sort of interesting, enjoyable sensation in the hips and pelvis area must be sexual. And if it must be sexual, then it must be shared with another person. Or if it's shared by having sex with oneself, that might be considered to be not a good thing to do, or a wrong thing to do, or somehow immoral in some way. Although now in modern times, that activity as well is a lot less censored and judged. But basically that idea that all juiciness in the hips, in other words, the free flow enjoyment and pleasure of energy in the hips and pelvic area must be sexual, and therefore must be about or channeled through or expressed through or released through the sexual act of one sort or another. But something I learned many years ago, a man I was seeing at the time, seemed to have an extraordinary amount of control over his own sexual energy. And this showed up beneficially in our relationship and in our sex life. But it also showed up beneficially for him in his general wellness. And I asked him about this, and he said he'd done a study on what was then called the Healing Tao. And there were some books out at the time by Mantak and Maniwan Chia, who at the time were a couple, I think maybe they're not a couple anymore, called Cultivating Sexual Energy. And there was a book for women and there was a book for men. And so he said through reading this book and following the practices in the book, he had learnt ways to channel his sexual energy in such a way that he was no longer trapped in a cycle of build-up of energy, desperation to release the energy, having sex, releasing the energy, and then maybe feeling quite good for a while afterwards, but then maybe feeling a bit flat. In other words, feeling at the mercy of that particular cycle of energy. He didn't have that anymore. He actually had more sexual energy than ever before, but it wasn't pushing him around or driving him. He could share it if he wished to, or he could channel it into the rest of his body such that it became creative energy. And so I read the book for women, and I just found it incredibly dry, and I found I just couldn't do the exercises. I couldn't get my head around it. So I went off and did a Healing Tao weekend in Islington in London. And this was absolutely fascinating. In this weekend, we were consciously stoking up our sexual energy without actually touching ourselves intimately or anything like that, but just using the mind. And it has been said that the mind or the brain is the largest sexual organ in the body, and it's quite true. So we were stoking up our sexual energy intentionally, and then we were practicing channeling it around the body and storing it within the body such that we could draw upon it whenever we needed to or wanted to. And we were also practicing the experience of having the energy flooding through the body in a way that was highly pleasurable, but which wasn't about building up to a climax and a release. So there wasn't the intense, almost painful tension that can be experienced prior to an orgasmic release. It was much more a sense of nourishment, a warming fire, if you like. Very pleasurable, but without tension. And I carried this forward in my life. I felt fantastic during and after this weekend. It was absolutely a most beautiful experience. And it did actually carry forward positively into my sexual experiences. But it also carried forward positively into a completely different relationship I then had with my sexual energy. I understood then that my sexual energy, my creative energy, my life force energy, all of these things are actually the same thing. They're all the chi energy. And the natural state is for these to be flowing freely through the body. It's not the natural state for them to build up to a high level of intensity and then be released like a flood, leaving a person emptied of energy and needing to recover. That's a very strong generalization about many of us, our relationship with that kind of energy. But I think it just illustrates a point, which is that if we are all about tension release, that's one experience and that can be very enjoyable, but it's not the only option. And something I was witnessing on that dance floor Saturday before last was people moving freely, and their energy was moving freely through their body. They were moving every part of the body, including the hips. There was no self-consciousness. Some of them may, people who were new that night for the first time may have been self-conscious for the first 10 minutes of the night. But by the time I was witnessing it, which was we've been dancing for about an hour and a half, to wonderful music in soft lighting, and it was just a very free flow, free-spirited type experience. And I could witness the energy and the flow and the freedom in the way people were moving. And I could feel it in my own body. And just that gratitude and pleasure in allowing ourselves to feel the energy throughout the body and to know that actually it is life force energy, sexual energy, creative energy, all is one thing. And coming through in these wonderful spontaneous movements on the dance floor. So this episode really is a call for us to realize that we have a limitless supply of this beautiful, powerful energy within us. And it's coursing through us, or if it's not coursing through us, it's stuck somewhere. And it's okay for it to move freely and be explored and enjoyed throughout the body. But it doesn't have to always be about tension release. And if you want to follow up on this and find out more about it, look up Healing Tao, where Tao is spelled T-A-O. Look up Mantak and Maniwam Chia. Look up Cultivating Sexual Energy. And look up the small cosmic cycle, which is the meditation we were doing on that weekend, where you cycle the energy around the body, store it, and then it feeds your health, your well-being, your energy. So I wonder what you're going to make of this particular conversation this week. I hope you enjoyed listening. That's all for Truth and Transcendence for today. And you will find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Please do give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, and share with your friends. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.